All right, everyone, welcome back. Congratulations. Not only are you on your way to becoming goalkeepers, but seems like you guys are pretty good timekeepers also, 11:45, right on the dot. And with what's coming up, I can see why you'd want to be punctual. We're well on our way to finding out the vital role you have to play in making the global goals happen. And our next step in today's journey is an incredibly inspiring one, I promise. We're about to be joined by Melinda Gates, a woman who has dedicated her life to breaking down the barriers preventing millions of people from reaching their full potential. The goalkeepers you are about to see are doing the same in their own communities.
जहाँ से मैं आई हूँ, पीरियड्स को लेके इतना स्टिग्मा है कि लड़कियाँ स्कूल से ड्रॉप आउट होती है और बाहर जाने से डरती है। मेरे काम से मैं ये बदलने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ।
Ambacho hakikuwa na maji wala stima. Kila familia iko na taa moja mafuta taa. Mafuta taa ni pesa mingi sana kutumia usiku mzima. Katika bara la Afrika, watu zaidi ya milioni 600 wana stima. Kutumia sola inaweza saidia kujenga vijiji.
Kulelewa Kibera ina changamoto mingi sana, sana sana kwa wanawake. Ubakaji ni shida kubwa sana Kibera. Wasichana wasiokuwa na ujasiri wako katika tahadhari kubwa sana. Mimi hufunza wasichana jinsi wanavyoweza kuepuka tahadhari hizi.
Naitwa Vivian. I like reading novels and singing.
Sharon, uko sawa? Unaitwa nani? Sema jina. Anda kuweka mkono wake hapa, sawa sawa? Hapa Sharon. Anda kujachilia, sawa sawa? Maybe no. It's a no. Serious? No. 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 Lakini bila yeye no.
मुद्दे के लिए यहाँ पे जमा है क्योंकि हमारा हेल्थ एंड सैनिटेशन को भी बाहर जाने का मौका मिले। ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 100 में से कम 99 गर्ल्स जो है एजुकेटेड रहे।
My goal is to get 1 million people out of poverty by 2020.
Being born in the slum, it doesn't make them less a girl.
Why should we wait until we were grown up to be significant?
Before Nelson Mandela marshaled a global movement to end apartheid, he was a student activist at a university. Before Martin Luther King Jr. was a world-renowned civil rights leader, he was a 26-year-old pastor. He was organizing his first boycott. And before Malala was a 21-year-old advocate for girls' education, she was a 14-year-old one. It's often said that change starts small. But the truth is, change also starts young. Before Mandela was Mandela, and before Malala was Malala, they were just young people working to make the lives better for people in their own communities. So it makes sense. That's where we're going to find the next Mandela and the next Malala too. We may not know their names yet. We may not recognize them even when we see them. But the world we live in tomorrow depends on what we do to empower these young leaders today. Earlier this morning, Bill explained why we believe that poverty is not inevitable. He also explained why current demographic challenges require us to work much harder now to fix it. The world's poorest places are also, by and large, the very fastest growing, which means more children are being born into places with less opportunity. But there's also a lot of potential in this moment. If we commit to ensuring that these young people have access to education, health care, jobs, then instead of getting trapped into a cycle of poverty, they will have everything they need to break out of that cycle for good. That version of the future is exactly what the Sustainable Development Goals were designed to create. And now, more than ever, leaders in my generation need to recognize that the leaders in the next generation are essential to delivering on those goals. More than half of India's population is under the age of 25. More than 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25. Now, I seriously doubt these young people wake up in the morning thinking about global goals, but they are thinking about a better future for themselves and a better future for the people in their communities. And they're taking the action to create the future that they want. And that makes them goalkeepers as much as anybody else in this room. And it's time that the world starts seeing them that way. This generation, your generation, is full of activists, advocates, experts. You aren't waiting for anybody's permission to get started. You're organizing each other. You're educating each other. You're empowering each other. Just look at the people around you in this room. You saw Salahe in the video. She's an 18-year-old activist. She's the head of a child-led sanitation movement. She's a champion for education in the Mumbai community. There are girls in school today because of what she has done. Jawani, she runs an organization that just 8 years ago has equipped 10,000 people with the tools to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS. Samson led a movement at this young age for Nigerians to run for office. He wanted to lower the age that Nigerians could run for office. Earlier this year, he campaigned for a bill, and guess what? That bill has been passed into law. So this is what progress looks like. You are exactly the change makers the world should be throwing its support behind. That means putting you at the heart of every national development plan. It means including you in policy making and facilitating dialogues between you and government leaders. Most of all, it means enlisting you as true partners in this work. Our commitment to being your allies starts right now. Being here with you today is a reminder that the next Mandela or the next Malala might be a lot closer than we think. Shouldn't we stop and listen to hear what they have to say?
Hi, my name is Joanny Bewa, and I'm from Benin Republic. I am a physician, the founder of the Young Beninese Leader Association and the Women Deliver Young Leader. I do believe in a world where young people drive innovation in health, where young people have a seat on the table and not on the floor, a generation where we can earn, we can learn, and we can return.
Hi everyone, My name is King Kaka. I'm from Kenya. I'm a musician, activist, humanitarian, and I believe that power without impact is useless.
Hi, my name is Trisha Shetty, and I'm a social activist. To the older generation in this room, if you are working for and not with us, if your policies are not youth inclusive and gender sensitive, then step aside. Today's youth are not your token next generation of leaders. We hold power and influence today, and we refuse to be minimized.
Please come join me on stage. So I wanted us to have a conversation today so that everybody in this room and everybody that's watching can learn about what you've done in your communities specifically, but also how should we think about empowering more youth activists like yourselves. So if you could each tell just a little bit about your story, about what it is exactly you do in your community and how you came to be the activist that you are today. Do you want to start, Joanie?
I would love to, Melanie.
Thanks.
So this is the story of a young girl from Benin Republic who at 9 years old almost died from an asthma attack. At 12 years old, she saw her best friend die from an abortion after an unattended pregnancy. At this moment, she realized she had a call to become a physician and address inequality in her community. This girl would not have been here if there had not been this physician saving her life. This girl, it is me. And then I decided to set up the Young Beninese Leader Association in Benin to actually advance gender equality and women's reproductive health. And we start with a little campaign, and I may elaborate on that later, that starts with 300 volunteers, but throughout the country targeted 10,000 youth to talk about HIV, reproductive health, access to contraception, and women empowerment.
And I'm going to add one more thing. Joanie is being very humble here. She's a medical doctor who's also working on getting her PhD. King Kaka, can you share your story a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm an advocate with UNICEF, and I got a chance to go around. Besides the performing and all that, we're distributing water points to a place called Turkana Lodwar. And I got first-hand contact with a girl who was secluded in a traditional hut, and she was undergoing her menses. And in this day and age, they still keep girls, they sit on sand or cow dung. And it really got to me. I said, I have this much followership and influence. How can I give back in an impactful way? So I came back to Nairobi and I did a research. I started a campaign called the King Kaka Sanitary Bank Campaign. And as we speak, I'm 6 months into the campaign and I'm still learning and I'm willing to learn, and that's why I'm here. But most importantly, we've benefited 10,000 girls. They're in school now and we're doing a mentorship project for them. So.
Fantastic. Trisha, can you explain a little bit?
You know, I won't go too far back because I don't want this room to feel disconnected. A few months ago, we had a case of an 8-year-old child who belonged to a minority Muslim community in Kashmir who was kidnapped and gang raped over a period of days. As if that wasn't bad enough, we had local politicians take to the streets in defense of rapists with our flag, because how can you jail Hindus for raping minority women? And make no mistake, this is not a problem that happens only in India. I'm going to throw a question open to the audience here. To the women in this room, Melinda and you all included, do you change your clothes based on where you go? If you're taking public transport, you feel the need to carry a scarf. If you're going in your car, you say, okay, I can wear the dress I wanted to wear. Just raise your hands up if you do. Okay, to the men in this room, do you change your clothes based on where you go? Today I'm taking a train, I cannot wear those shorts lest someone touch me or pinch my ass. You know, so this is gender inequality. Don't feel disconnected that this is a problem happening in an underdeveloped country amongst all of us. We're constantly having to account for who's going to touch us, who's going to molest us, who's going to stare at us without our consent. And this is why I do the work that I do. I do not believe gender is a women's rights issue. I look at every issue and very shamelessly push my agenda and ask them, how is this affecting women and young people?
Can each of you talk a little bit about, today I think everybody, yourselves included, and everybody in this room would call you advocates for your cause. But when did you actually make the switch to becoming an advocate? When did you start to see yourself as a leader? And was there anybody who was on your journey or your path in life that helped you know that you could become a leader? Do you want to start, Trisha?
Sure. I started going on ground and working. So I worked with survivors, I worked with families, and the unfortunate reality is, you know, even though we have laws in place, the implementation of it is so weak. To give you a story, I had a case of a child, 4 years old, who was raped, took her to the hospital with her father, and the hospital was refusing to administer an X-ray, even though there was a worry that her pelvis was fractured due to the force of the assault of the rape. And that's when I had to step up and say, don't you dare. I know the law, section 357C, what demands for guaranteed treatment of victims, don't you dare. And I had the father, even though he had diarrhea, show up to courtroom and say, ma'am, I think I have diarrhea, I don't think I can show up at the courtroom. I said, it's okay, don't worry about it, I'll be there. He still showed up. He ran to the bathroom every 5 minutes and he still showed up. So if you have your ear to the ground, if you're having honest conversations with people around you, survivors are facing the worst kind of atrocities. When they show up, when their families show up, that forces you to be a leader and say, I have access to this stage. How can I support them? How can I amplify their voices? And how do I step up and be a leader to do better by them? Because we really need to.
Shawani, what would you say? When did you first become a leader? And was there anybody on your path that helped you with that?
Absolutely. I think I'm the product of a mixture of contribution and support from men and women. I'm thinking about that time when I was practicing, and I was still studying as a medical student, and seeing some women having no information about sexual reproductive health, who are pregnant, who does not know how to prevent HIV or infections or take care of their pregnancy. At this moment, I realized one thing. Health is not just about care, but it is also about information and community work. This is locally. Globally, I've had the chance to be exposed with vibrant and amazing advocacy groups, such as the Women Deliver Young Leader Group, and recently, as part of the United Nations Young Leader for the SDGs, and I'm learning a lot from this group. And I realize every day that the call for action never stops. The call for action to put myself out there, to learn from my mistakes, to learn from my mentors is always there. And tomorrow actually starts today.
King Kaka, I want to ask you the same question, but slightly differently. So when did you know you were going to become a leader? Were you already an entertainer at that point? But then also, you could have picked any cause. And you picked a cause that really completely revolves around women and girls. You could have picked anything. How did you know you wanted to pick that cause? I know you saw this young girl, but why did you start then?
I think leadership has two angles. How I've learned it is they're born leaders, and they're leaders where we can spark the leadership in you. I mean, I became a leader when at home. I'm the last born, but my mom always showed me that you can be a leader. So my mom used to sell fruits. So when she came back home in the evening, she would give me a daily selling. So, and I would do the accounting for the house. Say, this buys the bread, this goes back to the business. And I was in primary school, 11, 12 years old. So I knew from the word go that I'm a leader through my mom. So, and that's why even my program is very sensitive on when the girls are starting with their menstrual cycle. We tell them, even though this is happening, there's a lot of confidence issues. but you are leaders. The world can accommodate everyone as a leader. The more the leaders, the more the issues we'll face. And then 2, why I decided to settle on MHM. I mean, that situation was just one case, but when I came back to the city, I mean, I do gigs. I make money, I get all these praises and all these likes, and I trend on social media. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I came to realize I'm 10 years in the game, and I realized, because you trend, and tomorrow something else is trending. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everybody forgets that. Can you take that and say, this is impactful? Mm. Can you count stories from the trend? So I said, I want to touch people's life individually. So even my program is based not only in the city, not Nairobi, so we concentrate on rural areas where girls know about me, but they never see me before. Mm. So when I get there in the villages, they're really excited. Mm. So now I tell them, we have a sanitary towel here. There's a point of conversation, but I want us to talk about leadership and you being the future generation. The future is now. Mm. So let's start now. Yeah. This is your community. Be leaders, own it. Mm. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think one of the things that as we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and women and girls, we need so many men to also help us, enlightened men, because we all need to teach young girls and young women that they can be leaders, they can do anything. What would you all say, Joanie and Tricia, what would you say to adults who told you along the way or tell other youth, you don't have enough experience, you're not far enough along in your life to know what you're doing? What do you say to those adults?
Well, first of all, I will just smile because I would think about millions or thousands of young girls and boys achieving change in the community at 8 years old or 10 years old. First of all, I think being a young people doesn't mean that you are unqualified. I am 28, I'm a physician, I'm working toward my PhD. I'm meeting younger and outstanding young people who are inspiring me, who are my mentor, yeah. I have mentors who are older and younger than me. So young people are experienced, they have the innovation, they have the talent, they have the skills that is needed. And what is critical is actually not just to claim that we want to help young people, but actually to make sure that we are involved in every stage of the process, from designing idea, from implementing, from making sure that we are all accountable. It is a participatory process, and this is how making sure that meaningful youth engagement should be part of each of your organization principle. Meaningful youth engagement is a common and participatory process where you ensure that the voice of the advocate, of the young people is heard, but not just as a beneficiary, but as an actor using a youth-centered approach or a women-centered approach. So definitely, there are thousands of young people who exemplify a role model and success. And I think intergenerational dialogue is actually a good opportunity to learn from both ways. Adults can learn from us as young people. We will definitely learn from the experience, but it is a common exchange. So yes, young people have the skill and can bring on the table much more than just talking. Please don't put us on the floor. We want to stay on the table, and we will definitely, work together for that.
Mm-hmm. Tricia, what would you add? That's great.
I don't say anything to them. If you expect me to prove my worth to you, for you to take me seriously, then you're not worth it. I'll find a better ally. Mm.
So what do young people need from older allies? You said, Joanie, obviously a seat at the table, listening to us, we've got great ideas, include us in your meetings and your activism. What else would you say, Kinkaka and Tricia, what else would you want adults to know when it does work well? How can they be most helpful to you?
I believe that generations have patterns, right? And our patterns are different from the upper generation, even though we face the same and common problems, right? So we know how to tackle our stories. It's like when you sit down with a 60, 70-year-old person, they'll tell you, in our days, it was different. We don't like the way you guys are doing your things now. But yet we're facing the same problems, economic problems, education, still. Even though now maybe patterns are varying. So I would say we have solutions to what we have now. And you had solutions to what you had. Why don't we combine? Why don't we combine and find a 2.0 version of this problem? Yeah, there's a 2.0 version. We can all coexist, and solutions will be much quicker if we partner. It's simple. It's just partner. We lose nothing. Yeah.
What would you say, Trisha?
You know, I was really deeply inspired by and moved by what Nadia said yesterday when she said hope as an expiration date. Young people's bodies are bearing witness to the worst kind of abuse, violence, and atrocities. And their bodies are also bearing witness to people's silence and complicity. I find it unacceptable. I mean, I love the UN Women and everything that they stand for. And I'm going a little rogue here, but forgive me. I find it unacceptable that a senior official got away by abusing, and I think the space warrants me to say this truth, that a senior official got away with sexually abusing young people for 15 months, for a while, that the investigative process took 15 months, and that there is no accountability for the people who were complicit in covering up this. So what we need, as young people, what we need and demand for is accountability from the older people. Do better by us. Do not look at us and say, speak up. We're speaking up. You're not listening hard enough. Do better. Ask us. Look at us and ask us, and we refuse to be your token representatives. You know, we don't need that. This space is amazing. But outside this highly sanitized room is a lot of abuse that we are intimately aware of. You know, validation only takes you so far. We are demanding for accountability, and that is what the older generation can do. Step up for us, refuse to be jaded, give up that cushy seat you've sat on for so long, and do better by us, because trust me, we will leave you all behind, because we don't want to leave others behind.
Trisha, follow up on that a little bit, because I'm not sure everybody in the room knows that you led a very successful campaign against the sanitary napkin tax in India and got that passed, taken away. What did you learn from that campaign that could be useful to everybody else who's watching or who's in this room?
What I learned from the very beginning, the first statistic that I was introduced to is that in India, only 12% of women have access to sanitary napkins. And the rest of them are forced to use cloth, ash, sand, plastic, dried leaves. And when we tried to talk to Bollywood influencers, celebrities, no one wanted to talk about periods. We drafted a whole representation, sent it across to government ministries, asked them for multiple asks. No one cared. What I learned, and what reaffirmed my faith in the power of young people, is that leaders are weak. They will look in the direction of public momentum and public opinion. So we tapped into that. We did not spend a single rupee. We launched the largest campaign globally on tax-free menstrual hygiene products. We had over 24 million impressions on Twitter alone. And it was really simple. We asked influencers, comedians. That was great, because we didn't want to go to Bollywood people. All they would do is retweet or share and not add any value to it. So we reached out to people who have value. We reached out to influencers who are using their mediums, regardless of how small or big your following is, but who are using their platform to say something that matters to others. And said, this is the issue. These are the statistics. How can you tag the finance minister, make this issue your own, and ask him to drop the tax? So we had comedians who tweeted out to the finance minister and said, do you think I've taken a monthly subscription to bleed? What's up? Why are you taxing me? We had another actress who said, oh, I'm going for my luxury vacation. Here's my luxury dress. Here's my luxury shampoo. Here's my luxury sanitary napkin. Do you think this is a damn luxury? It is not. And that just hit, because what people connected with those issues and with those voices. And we made it very raw. People were putting up their own videos from the cell phone. We didn't have film crew coming in and shooting this because we wanted people to realize these issues are real, these issues are raw, and to feel connected with it. They leaned in. And the second they leaned in and people mobilized around it, the leaders had to give in and follow suit and drop the tax.
That's what I love talking to each of you backstage is sometimes it doesn't take a lot of money. It takes a lot of creativity and a lot of voice, right? And organizing people together. We just have a little bit of time. King Kaka, can you talk about how you've brought other men along on those conversations about women and girls?
Yeah, so same thing she has mentioned. When I started, I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I'm King Kaka. I can call anyone and get them on the campaign. But then I realized down the line that I need believers. I don't need people who have access to social media. I need believers so that whenever I give you this vision, you can post it the way I want to post it, in your own language. So I said, since I started this story, I got criticized initially. Guys were like, man, this is a guy. Why you fighting for the girls? And it trended for a day, and it came down there.
We need more men like you, please.
Yeah,
fight.
so I approached a few men from national team, influencers here and there, and I had talks with you. I didn't approach you because I had this campaign, so I called you and I asked you, can we do lunch tomorrow? And I would start stories about, do you love the weather these days? And how's everything back home? Have you noticed that some of the girls, yeah, I've noticed, yeah. So if I see that you're really interested, then I'll engage you. So that has really been powerful with my campaign, and I've seen real results. So girls are now going back to school, and we've created a register for them so that if term 1 they got 300 marks, we come back to you and ask you, now that you're in school, why did you get 250? Yeah, so real results, real impact.
Shawani, just to close out this panel, give us one last thing that you'd like everyone here to remember about youth and their ability to activate other youth on these key sustainable goal issues.
I think there is no better moment to talk about how to engage young people and young women to build 2013, to contribute to the sustainable development world. One thing that I would like to call each of you to do is to personally, but also publicly, commit to ensure that in each of your agenda, each of your intervention, young people are in the center as participants, as actors, but more, that you highlight and showcase success stories, because young people are not just needy, they are talent, they are innovation, they are change maker, they are the world.
Well, thank you all for being here today. You've given us a lot of inspiration and a lot of ideas I think everybody here can take home with them. My next thing that I'd like to say is I'd now like to welcome to the stage Jaya. Jaya is the UN envoy on youth. Just this week, she and the UN Secretary General launched the UN Youth Strategy, a new UN commitment to working for and with young people all across the globe. She's here to introduce an exciting opportunity to support the next generation of goalkeepers. Welcome, Jaya.
Jaya, go ahead.
That was wow. Do I need to even speak about youth leadership after this? Good afternoon, everyone. Young people have a remarkable ability to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. And we know that leaders across sectors won't have a strong incentive to achieve the global goals unless there is someone keeping score. So how do we turn that vision into tangible progress? Part of the answer lies in having the data and insights to fully understand the problems that we face. In some communities, for example, we still don't know exactly how many girls are out of school Or how many families lack access to clean water and sanitation? The first step to solving these problems is fully understanding them. In other cases, this data exists, but it's presented in confusing charts and tables. When we help people see the story behind the numbers, they can be inspired to act. To address this need, a coalition of partners is proud to launch today the Goalkeepers Youth Action Accelerator, an open call for young leaders and youth organizations that use data to track progress and advocate for it to happen faster. The accelerator will offer up to 30 young activists the know-how, the resources, and networks they need to scale up their projects. Each will receive up to $30,000 in funding, $30,000 in funding, goods, and services. They'll get consistent mentoring and technical training about how to best source, use, and present data. And with access to an incredible network through these partners, this really is a golden opportunity to develop and to learn. We are the accelerator team, and we are looking for candidates between 18 and 35 years old who are working on a project that is accelerating progress towards global goals 1 through 6, either by tracking new data or presenting data in new ways to inspire change. You can find the application online at civicus.org, or if you want to learn more to support the initiative, visit the accelerator station in the atrium at the end of the day. The global goals are achievable. A better world is in our sight, and we will only get there together. Thank you very much.
Today, we create heroes of ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Heroes who don't wait on crisis to save the day. Heroes who are making others heroes every day. Heroes who know that to speak, they must first listen, not hear. Heroes who may have become heroes out of fear. Heroes who realize expression isn't a privilege, but a right. Heroes who know you don't need guns and fists to fight. Heroes who don't look like heroes you've seen in the past. Heroes who were told they wouldn't last because they were too loud, too dark, too optimistic, too angry, too young. Too many heroes unsung. So many bonding over boundaries that were made to separate, not enough encouraged to collaborate, cooperate, pass the mic and educate. But when you take to the podium, you will hear only age earns a mic, that your monologue will fall upon deaf ears and they will tell you you still have left years until they take what you say with weight. But do not wait. Don't let them write your stories. Rewrite, challenge, and change histories. Ask them to imagine a tomorrow we can all celebrate. Zero hunger, zero poverty, zero hate. Heroes who were told they were too young to believe in such big dreams. Heroes who know it takes a village, so they form teams. Teams that know the best reaction is action. Action towards sustainability, encouraging early responsibility. And with these goals, our voices unite. We're leaving nobody behind when it comes to our rights. Because when you're too tired of waiting on others to save the day, you stand tall and show them saving the world is child's play. Thank you.
Well, Well, thank you, Aranya, for that terrific performance. That was wonderful. I'd now like to introduce Uzo. You may already know her from her Emmy Award-winning role in Orange is the New Black. She's also Heifer International's first ambassador to Africa, and she's here today to talk with us about what it means to be an ally for young Africans. So thanks for being here, Uzo.
Thank you for having me.
So you are a champion for really, particularly youth and people in agriculture, and you have that role with Heifer International. Tell us a little bit about how you came to that role and what you're doing in that role.
Well, I came to that role, I was in Los Angeles during Emmy weekend one year, and we went to a party, and it was the first time I'd ever been to a red carpet where there was a llama and a cow on the carpet. And I was curious to know what's happening here. You know, there were all these farm animals, and I inquired, and they said that this is Heifer International who's hosting this party today. And I asked, you know, what is Heifer International? And it was explained to me that it was a new idea of microloaning to farm workers throughout the world, and in this particular case, it was specific to Uganda. And I thought it was just so phenomenal, the work that they were doing, and the intention behind the organization was to not just bring people to the poverty line, but to be living above the poverty line. So.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we hear from other people who might champion these causes, well, I don't know enough about the issue. I wouldn't know where to begin. How did you think about that? I mean, you've moved from, you're still an actress, that's your full-time job, but you also do this. How do you feel like, okay, I know enough that I really believe in this cause and I want to advocate for it?
I think you could see it in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding with the organization, you know, with support through organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You see how far something like your $42.8 million funding can go to EAD, the East African Dairy Development Project that exists in East Africa, where you're seeing nearly 1 million people by 2019 are going to be able to double their income, are going to see dairy infrastructure increases within their farm work that they're doing there, the educations that they're learning with regards to the treatment and care of the animals. In East Africa, and specific to Uganda, where I do my work, you're seeing household incomes double to nearly $2,300. And in a context of Uganda, that is enormous, enormous change to a family and their sustainability.
And when you talk to families on the ground, what do you learn in hearing their voices in this work?
They are moved beyond measure. Really, truly. I think that's something, you know, we have so much research and case studies of information that we can see done and given to us, but the things that we can't measure are the pride and joy that people feel for being able to provide for their families and make a difference in their lives. I know you have been around the globe to see and feel that. You can't measure that. The ability for someone to change not only their lives, but also affect generational change, because that's really what it is about. It's not about just saving of the life that's here today, but the life of tomorrow as well. And I think that's what's so heroic about this work that Heifer is doing, the work that you are doing, the work that Hunger can do to change lives. Heifer does this amazing ceremony. It's called the Passing on the Gift ceremony, where people who have applied to the program and have gone through the training process stand up in their community, and they are the recipients of the livestock loan. Now, what you realize when you're watching the ceremony is that the loan that is being gifted to them is being given by someone who just the year before was themselves a recipient. of that loan. And it's really hard, you know, when you think about it, to ask for help a lot of times. And so what begins as feeling like maybe a little embarrassed or perhaps even ashamed that you have to reach out and ask for an extension becomes this wonderful full circle moment where you have been helped, and now here you are a year later giving back to your own community. And it's not, you know, giving back one of your 10 calves. You have to give back the very first one that you're given. So there's this joyful, amazing circle of life that happens, and there's no measure that can be made for that. It's amazing.
Do you think that's empowerment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you start standing, you know, sort of in the shadow, like, okay, give me this goat, you know, and walking away, But then not only do you learn a trade skill, you know, a lot of when we go to the EAD, there's an EAD co-op that we've gone to in Uganda on our tours there, and you see all of these smallholder farmers who have learned how to not only raise the calves and the animals themselves, but they've learned how to milk them. A lot of them have gotten training in veterinary skills. A lot of them have been trained in how to induce artificial insemination. And so they have built this depository there in this small village, and it's this communal work that you feel them all putting into the community because it serves as a co-op, this milk depository. And you can feel the pride, it radiates there as they are putting all of this together. They have built their own community up by their own hands. And it's this constant reminder that you have that, you know, people who are in need, they are not looking for a hand out. They are looking for a hand up. Right. And when you get someone, exactly.
They're lifting themselves up.
That's exactly right.
And then they end up lifting their neighbors up, right? Because they give them a calf, and then all of a sudden everybody's lifting the community up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's funny because when we're at the UN or many places, we talk about empowerment, and I think it's this somewhat fuzzy word. Like, we know it when we see it, but how do you measure it, right? Bill and I are always about measurement. Like, how do you measure empowerment? And yet, what I'm starting to learn, I was in West Africa again in January, and same thing with a group of women sitting around. There were about 10 of us, and these women had all done the same thing you're describing with the calf. They'd done with chicks and young chickens and vaccinations, and they now had flocks. And I asked this much older woman who had done this. I said, "Well, has anything changed in your village because you now have a flock of chickens?" And she was already sitting very tall, and she said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Well, what?" And she said, "All the men in the village look at me differently, and guess what? They come to me now for loans." And I thought, that's empowerment, right? Exactly. What would you say? You've gotten into this work much younger than Bill or I ever came to it. We were a little late in terms of waking up to working in Africa and many places around the globe. What would you say to youth about the Sustainable Development Goals and about working on activism? And what can other adults who are older, maybe my generation, do to help those youth?
I would say we need you. Like, we all, like the young people, I think, especially with the advent of the internet and social media coming to life, and it's something that we all have the power and the tool in our back pocket to access the whole world. No one knows technology, nobody knows communication and media and connection better than young people. We know this, every single app and social media connection that exists is an access point to millions, thousands, hundreds of people. And when change happens, when it's a part of the conversation. And I think young people are more powerful today than they have been in any previous generation to affect social change because they have that knowledge and want. We are the people who can actually insist that the conversation, in this case of hunger, remain forward, is a front stage conversation. And we can do that by continuing to make it a part of our social dialogue. And so that we've seen, since studies have shown that since 2000, hunger has steadily decreased because it has remained a conversation point, and front of mind conversation point, and that's just through conversations that young people are having. And now that we have Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and Marco Polo and what have you, you can continue to keep it a front of mind conversation. I think also there's something to be said for the generation above us. I hate saying older generation.
That's okay, I'll own up to that.
It's the generation above to listen to the concerns of the youth. You know, when you are gone, we are still here to deal with the issues at hand and the issues that have not yet been completed or tackled by you. So the things that are our crisis and concern, please make it your crisis and concern, because we are the left behind who will have to deal with its consequences.
Yeah. I love that you've taken on the issue of hunger, because one of the things that we know, some of these issues are hard for people to connect with. If it's malaria, they say, well, I don't have malaria in my community if I live in Europe or the United States. And yet you meet, Bill and I meet so many people dealing with malaria. But hunger is something that absolutely people can connect to, because we all know what it feels like at some point in the day if you don't have enough to eat and you're hungry, right? And then you can imagine pretty easily, oh my gosh, if I was trying to go to school as a young child and I'm hungry, are you kidding? I can't pay attention. So the fact that you've taken this up and are making it a conversation, an ongoing conversation, and bringing real solutions. And I also love that I think your generation will come up with solutions that previous generations didn't come up with, because you also have new tools and new ways to think about it. We didn't have social media, right?
That's right.
So thank you so much for your energy around this topic. Thanks for everything you do to keep this front and center and to keep kids front and center for the world.
Thank you. And I just want to say also thank you really, truly to your foundation, because the effects and change that your extremely generous funding have done for organizations like EAD with Heifer International have affected hundreds of thousands of lives in positive ways. So you are a part of that generational change. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for the interview.
Thanks for helping me join Uzo to this stage. One little plug I'm going to say about Heifer International is that when my kids were little, about this big, and we would celebrate the holidays, one of the ways that they could remember some of the people that we would talk about when Bill and I would come back from trips was by having on their wish list for Christmas something for somebody else around the world, a goat, a chicken, a cow. And it was really nice because then they could connect to the issues on a day that we were celebrating other things and they were getting gifts. Other people around the world were getting gifts too. So it is a great way for even little young people to connect to some of these issues. I started off the day by talking about the power of youth. And to finish, I'm going to bring up someone who can do even a much better job than I can, a much cooler job, as my kids would say, because he can rap about it. So please welcome back to the stage a goalkeeper, a hip-hop artist, and as one of his songs puts it, Swahili Shakespeare, King Kaka.
Okay. Yeah. Mina taka mina stand for equality. Na nikisema na fight, mina fight for humanity. Hold up, sin mambo mingi na nikero. Mina taka tukucheki wali ki develop. So nikisema equality is on the real roads. That's because the fight say I tell you the will blow. Adakiziba maskio I tell you they will know. Soldiers of change, I tell you they will go, but only when we come together, discussing real issues, even though me na penda, Red Station na Melinda, na sisi ni Garbina, so Bindeka Pana from Kenya to Texas, from Nani to West Indies, finally we discussing the SDGs. What you something broke is fixing. I'll put you on. put you on. I put you on. I put you on.
Well, wrapping up the morning with a rap. That's the way we roll, right, Nancy? Thank you so much to Melinda and all the thought-provoking contributors, and of course, King Kaka, Naturally 7.
Amazing stuff. Well, now feels like the perfect time to take stock and also take sustenance. So let's do lunch and get ready for this afternoon when we'll be looking at what it really means to be a goalkeeper.
But you definitely want to be on time back from lunch. Bill Gates will be here at 2:15 to welcome you back. We'd love for you guys to return because when you come back, we do want to hear from you. We'll start opening it up for questions, all that kind of stuff. So enjoy lunch, guys. See you in a bit.
And that was the end of our second session for Goalkeepers 2018. An incredible session that involved Melinda Gates having discussions with Trisha Shetty, King Kaka, the incredible rapper who gave us a bit of a performance there around their SDGs, as well as Uzo Aduba, Uzo Aduba, who is the actress from Orange is the New Black, speaking about her activism and her passion for the SDGs that she's trying to push and champion. And some real outspoken performers out there and outspoken speakers, but someone who I'm really interested to talk to as well is someone who's revolutionized the way you can fund. He's French, and it's Vincent Taboul-Flacher. He started something called Good Deed. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us about Good Deed, how it works, and how you plan on funding the NGOs that you do.
Okay, so thanks, it's an honor to be there too. In fact, Good Deed is a community of 270,000 now donors, young donors mostly, and we engage them to watch ads voluntarily every day on our website and mobile app. And when they watch an ad, it generates revenue and it funds some NGOs projects. And the things that make us begin that is that you use every day Spotify, YouTube, Google, Facebook. It's free.
Yeah.
It's because of the ads. So now you can donate and it's free. And young people want to act, they want to change and make the world a better place, but they don't have sometimes the tools. We give them the tools and we try to inspire them to make it larger.
What made you think of that kind of idea?
It's a book of Muhammad Yunus, who is a Peace Nobel Prize. My grandma offered that to me. I was reading it in the subway like every day, and one time I was like, okay, I want to do something that has an impact. I don't want to just walk like everybody and with no sense. I want to make sense in my life and in my work life, and that's why I found the idea of Good Deed at Christmas. It was Christmas period. Yeah.
And you've actually created some incredible impact with your platform. Tell us about some of those numbers and those landmarks and milestones you have in terms of the funding through Good Deed. And you're only 22 years old.
Yeah, so I'm 22 years old. I began alone, but we're never alone when you lead a project like that. So we have a team of 15 people now in Paris. We have a community of 270,000 young people in France and all around the world who donate every day. And thanks to all that, we generated more like $500,000 for 150 projects all around the world for NGOs such as Handicap International, UNICEF, World Food Programme, Doctors Without Borders and others. So we funded a lot of projects. I was there in Myanmar to see one of them. For example, it was a school, and it's incredible to see okay, we have a community of people, young people, they just are on their computers, and after it generates so much smiles and joy. So yeah, it's great.
Vincent, Magnifique, keep up the great work that you're doing, and we look forward to seeing more of you and more impact that you're making.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Merci. That was Vincent Tuwulfasher from Good Deed, and he's doing some amazing things purely from just getting youngsters to watch their ads and actually get those funding to move towards being able to fund different types of organizations. Next up, we're going to be chatting to Mona Chalabi, who's waiting in the wings here to have a conversation with me. And Mona Chalabi is a journalist and data analyst. And Mona, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was chatting a little bit earlier to Max Rosa, who is in...
I didn't know that he was here, yeah.
He's here as well, and you both work in data. And he was actually saying it's a bit of a misconception that data and graphs and everything is something that people find boring, and there's a way that you can make it really interesting. So how do you make it interesting?
I try to incorporate the subject into each data visualization so that if it's a chart about circumcision rates maybe, that even just glancing at it, you understand that it's about circumcision. So on my circumcision rate chart, I used bananas peeling.
Yes.
Rather than most charts, they just feel so clinical and sterile, they could be about anything at all, yeah.
So you make it as fun as possible and something that people can relate to.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully that makes the data memorable, right? That's a really important thing.
Yeah.
If people can't remember what the numbers are, then I've messed up somehow.
Speaking of numbers, through this you've managed to garner some pretty significant numbers on Instagram, and you just look like you have a lot of fun with it. Where did that really come from? Why did you find it important to show the data, and really in the way that you do? Because you even say that you're not an illustrator, although I think you downplay yourself quite a bit. You're just a person who likes to just try and get your geekiness out for people to understand in a great, fun way.
Yeah, well, it came from a place where I used to work for the International Organization for Migration, and I felt that a lot of our information wasn't being shared with the general public because it was so sterile. And I feel like it's particularly important to be sharing that information with people who are personally affected by it, right? So if I'm going to do a chart, for instance, on the possible side effects of female hormonal contraception, it's really important that women who might be taking that type of contraception are reading about what the side effects might be. So I feel like the people that are affected by the data are the most important people to reach.
What would you say is the most important or most interesting topic you've had in a reaction to?
Oh, that's a really good question.
You challenge the ones that people wouldn't normally go for.
Yeah. I don't know, male circumcision got a very healthy debate going on it the other day. A lot of people wondering why the rates are so different from country to country. People wondering whether it's traumatizing for the men who have had it done. People wondering about the health consequences of doing it. And very often, I'm not the person who's best positioned to answer those questions, but people in the comments might be, right? They might be health workers who have really interesting insights. And by merely posting that data, I can kind of get that conversation going.
Mona, thank you so much. Keep the great work, keep making it fun, and keep spreading all the dates that we need out there so people know what is really the facts and what's really true out there. So thank you very much.
Try. Thanks again for having me. Bye, Matt.
Mona Chalabi, such an amazing spirit and so talented at what she does, and she has so much fun with what she does in terms of getting data out there for people to be able to consume in a really fun and light and easy way. A person who is making some incredible, well, I guess groundbreaking movements throughout the world is Edion Dopu. He is just, he's something really, really special. From South Africa. Hello, Eddie, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Very good.
Yeah, thrilled to be here, delighted.
It's fantastic to have you here. It's fantastic to be able to talk to you. And you are doing some fantastic work in terms of making sure that people with inaccessibility I guess, accommodated in as many ways as possible, and that is your passion point of making sure that you're the mouthpiece to be able to spread that message.
Yeah, absolutely. So what people don't know is that people with disabilities constitute the world's largest minority group. There are 1 billion people on the planet who live with disabilities, and yet people with disabilities are also the most invisible and marginalized segments of society. So my work is really about raising the visibility of people with disabilities and putting the issue of inaccessibility at the heart of the agenda of human rights.
As far as raising the visibility and taking the agenda to new heights, you're about to epitomize that. You're about to become the first wheelchair user to go into space. Tell us a little bit about that and where that really comes from, because it's not something that someone who's bound to a wheelchair just wakes up and decides to do.
Well, that's exactly why I'm doing it. I'm joining forces with the UN on a groundbreaking campaign to address the UN General Assembly from the edge of the planet as the first wheelchair user in space. And so it's a symbolic act. It really is about saying that disability and possibility are two sides of the same coin.
What's the response been so far? Because I'm lucky to have personally known you, and you were quite apprehensive, and you weren't so sure whether you'd get a good response and whether you'd get the backing and the support and the funding for the project. Have you gotten the funding? Has the response been good? And what else do you need to make sure this happens?
The response has been overwhelming. The UN has thrown its weight behind me, and I'm delighted to be working with the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. I'm also working with a distinguished group of doctors that will get me ready physically. And now I just need to figure out the flight itself.
How can people at home help?
Follow me on social media, and you will get all the updates on the whole journey and the whole campaign.
All right, well, we mentioned on social media that we would be talking to you, and we actually got a question, and they want to know, when are you going to go?
Definitely next year. Early next year. The date is yet to be finalized, but yeah, very soon.
Eddie, thank you so much. You're an incredible inspiration. One more thing I just really want to know. You're speaking just after this lunch break session, and you're going to be speaking in the next session about what it takes to be a goalkeeper. So could you give us a bit of a snippet on what we can expect?
Well, there's a conversation between me and Mama Garza Machel, which is very exciting. And I have an opportunity to really speak about the importance of having a vision that is larger than yourself. And that's the way to really be a goalkeeper.
Fantastic. And you really are a goalkeeper. Thank you so much. And good luck. We'll be watching you. Thank you. And Eddie Ndopu, a wonderful inspiration, and someone who really epitomizes breaking his own boundaries and, I guess, barriers as much as possible to be able to be the voice and speak for people who have inaccessibility to the most simple things. And he's someone who's so passionate about that. Next up, I'm speaking to Emmy Mahmood, and Emmy is a poet and activist, and she's with the UNHCR as well. Emmy, thank you so much for joining me. You're a poet and an activist, and this is something that you're quite passionate about, speaking on behalf of the refugees. But before we get to that, how important is it to do that through your art?
I think that my art, especially spoken word, it allows people to break down the barriers between them and all other humans. And so it's the quickest route to just getting to the root of all that we are. It's telling people that, you know, we all want the same things and we're all working for the same things, so why not work together?
Fantastic. Well, we've also had you're one of those other people where people really wanted to ask you some questions on social media when we told them we would be talking to you. And the question that they have here for you is that you have written some incredibly beautiful poetry about your experiences growing up in Sudan. So how did you discover poetry as a way of expressing yourself and telling your story?
The first time I heard about poetry, my second grade teacher said a poem is something that rhymes about something you care about.
Yes.
So the first poem I ever wrote went like this: lions are light brown. I think they like to sit down. And I came home, my parents were like, you're a poet. I was like, I'm a poet. But it wasn't until college that I discovered spoken word. Yes. And it was a completely new art form. And, you know, in joining my poetry group called Oye at Yale, they really transformed my whole experience and how I engage with life and just emotions. Yeah. So it just changed me.
How important is it for you to be able to be a mouthpiece for the refugees and the work that you do with the UNHCR and, in terms of what you feel can really be done? How important is it for you to back that cause? And tell us a bit about that work that you're doing.
Define mouthpiece.
A voice,
I think in the past 2 years of working with UNHCR and just being able to meet people on the ground and in the field and everything, I felt very privileged to be able to just reach people where they are, and reach people where they least expect to be reached. And I think it's really important, especially right now with all of the divisiveness around the world, all the political turmoil, like rising nationalism everywhere, climate change, all the scary things that we're here to talk about. Everybody's throwing their voice into the pot, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm just making sure that refugee voices are there too.
Well, you speak about that divisiveness. This is one of those events where everyone is essentially unified in the same ideas and goals to be able to move towards achieving that Vision 2030. What have you learned so far in terms of what more you think you can do? Are you encouraged? And what's been your highlight from the Goalkeepers event for this year?
I think the beautiful thing is that this is my second Goalkeepers event, and I actually got to be a youth advisor to help with the afternoon session. What makes me feel good about being here now is that it feels like it really is a community that's developing and growing and getting to know each other. It's like the old people are very open about it being a learning experience for them too. So I feel very included in the process of change. And so just like Richard said earlier, that this is just to encourage us to do the work that we're already doing, but to put the Goalkeepers spin on everything so that we can all, learn how to speak about it together.
Well, let's speak about you mentioning the older people. In Africa, we've got a kind of a big issue right now where we, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Our population is predominantly the youth. And I think that there's about 80% of Africa's population which is 35 years or younger, although we have leaders who are averaging in the 60s as a whole, and they're driving sort of policy and what the youth need and what the future is. What are your thoughts on that before I go on to the next thing?
Well, I just hosted a walk across Sudan. I walked 1,000 kilometers from Darfur to Khartoum. And during that time, it was a lot of young people who were joining me, thousands of people across the way. And the entire time, every time the older generation tried to engage with us on a different level than an equal one, it just completely fell flat. My kids would be saying things like, oh, we're just waiting for the old people to die. And I would say, that's not how we need to do things, right? So what was really beautiful about it is being able to sit with them all together and create community in a way that inspires collaboration and inspires equality. Because equality, when we say it so often, it might feel like an empty word, but what it really is being able to recognize someone and their struggle, where they are, and being able to say, I see you, I feel you, and I hear you, and I'm trying to understand you. Help me understand. And so I guess this is the long way of me saying that as long as communication and intergenerational dialogue is happening, we can actually inspire change, and we can learn from the mistakes of the past, and we can also teach people as we're going along not to make those mistakes in real time.
Well, another question we had gotten from one of our Facebook users, and I think it's something that's very appropriate to go towards you because I'd love to know your thoughts on it. President Macron had mentioned earlier that he sort of hopes for an Africa where the youth do not have to leave Africa for a better life, essentially. But what are your thoughts regarding something like that with the amount of human capital that is needed to stay in Africa in order to progress Africa forward, as opposed to just educating our best young Africans and they all just end up leaving? What do you think is needed to encourage them to stay? What kind of resources, what kind of investment, what kind of support is needed in the educational space for them to be able to do that?
So as much as I love President Macron, he's super cool and everything, I think that he was talking about the brain drain that we all realize is happening in Africa. But I guess I would be an example of someone who had to leave. I was forced to leave. I didn't have that choice to be educated there and then stay. I was forced to leave. I got educated, and the way that I was educated at Yale taught me that I can actually go back. And when I went back, what I saw baffled me. And it baffled me because there were people who stayed. I think that when we talk in absolutes and when we say things that, you know, they do address certain issues, and he is trying to bring light to a certain issue.
You missed the whole story.
Yeah, you overlook like the rest of the story. The reality is that there are people in real time on the ground. I hear this all the time, where people, especially young activists, honestly, like that we highlight in the world that we're in. And we even have this early on with Goalkeepers, and we're changing that, where people would say, you know, I was doing this thing in Africa because nobody knew about it. And then everyone who is from there would be like, actually, we were trying to get people to know about it. We knew about it. We're here. I think that is the eternal struggle that we're trying to figure out. How do we give voice? How do we lift up the people who are already there? So I would say to President Macron, I loved what he said, and it's true that we do need to think about the brain drain, but we also have a lot of people who are there waiting for that human capital. I think we're already ready for the next step.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Emmy, and good luck with all the incredible work that you're doing, and keep spreading the good word.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. That was Emmy Mahmood, and unfortunately that brings us to the end of our live stream Q&A, but please make sure that you keep watching the rest of the live stream. In the next session, there's some incredible speakers who are going to be on stage. Graça Michelle, Adrian Dopu, some more from Bill and Melinda Gates, and there's also going to be a Mandela piece on stage a little bit later, and so much more. It is not over just yet. It's something that you just want to keep watching, and stay tuned, and keep your questions coming in. Perhaps they can be answered a little bit later, but for myself, Maps Papanani from the live stream Q&A at #Goalkeepers18. It's goodbye.